Hey there, I'm Leslie Weaver with Quilters Quarters, and today we're going to go over taping the pattern for the Oxbow Tote as well as cutting instructions for the Oxbow Tote. So you should have your pattern by now, and what we should have is copies of each piece that you've cut out. So we have 2 copies of each pattern piece. So we're going to start with one side, taping it together. All right, so we're going to start with A. A goes with A. And then B is going to go with B. And then you'll have C and D. Now notice I'm doing the regular, but we are going to do the regular and the overnight because I'm going to make the overnight bag. So here's C. And here's D. So there's one part of the main panel. So we're going to put that aside. And then we're going to move on to part E. So you're going to put your part E's together. And then you'll have the one part of your front exterior pocket. And then these, the reinforced base and then the interior pocket, we're going to put those aside and wait until we tape the other copies of the same patterns. So again, with your second set, we're going to tape A with A. B with B. C and D together. I can get the tape to work. And then your exterior pocket panel, the panel E. All right, and then we'll set the reinforced base and the interior pocket again behind it. So now we have taped copies of everything. So this is the regular size tote. So where it says place on fold, you don't have to make 2 copies. You can literally place this where the fold of the fabric, your fold would be right here, and you can literally cut it and it'll cut 2 pieces, but I don't make a bag that way. I always put my patterns together. So what you're gonna do is, one of these is gonna go upside down. So you're gonna literally put it with the other where it says place on fold and tape that together. It just makes cutting so much easier, especially when you're brand new to bags, but I still do it even though I'm not brand new to bags. All right, so there's our main panel on the regular tote. It is taped and put together. So we're gonna put that aside. Then we're gonna move on to our exterior front pocket, which is E. And again, we're gonna turn it over, place it next to each other. Where it says place on fold, those are gonna go together and tape those together. Now you have your front exterior pocket piece together. Next, you're going to take your reinforced base and you're going to place one of those upside down and put those together where it says place on fold. Then put that aside. And then the last piece that we have for the regular tote is the interior pocket. Again, put it upside down and tape it together. Okay, what I also like to do is after I get it all taped together, I go through and I highlight and I write literally what I'm going to be doing. So on the Oxbow tote regular, you see it, this is the main panel, but you're gonna cut 8. You're gonna have 8 total cuts. 2 exterior fabric, 2 lining, 2 fusible woven facing, and then fleece or foam. I'm going to use foam. I think most of you are too. So what I do is I literally highlight all of that. And then I write, usually in red, 2 main, which is my exterior fabric, 2 lining, 2 SF101, which is what we're going to use for the lining as our interfacing, and 2 fleece or foam, which I'm going to use the foam as the stabilizer. So that's our regular tote. And then on the exterior pocket, do the same thing. We're going to cut 3 on the fold, but one of them is going to be the accent fabric, which is your color that you've chosen for the pocket. Usually that's going to be the same as your straps. In my case, it's not. I have 3 different colors. So we're going to highlight all of that. So we're going to have 1 accent, which I call contrast, 1 lining, and 1 SF101. And then for our reinforced base, my reinforced base is going to be vinyl. I think some of yours is as well. So we're going to have 4 on the fold. We're going to cut 4 of them. So 1 accent fabric, which mine is going to be vinyl, 1 lining, 1 fusible interfacing, and 1 heavyweight. Okay, so you can either use this template or you can use the cutting dimensions that are inside the pattern. I usually use the cutting dimensions inside the pattern, but for purposes of this video, I'll go ahead and use the template. So we're going to use, I'm going to use 1 vinyl. Vinyl is just stronger to me, especially on a base of a bag. So we're going to cut 1 lining, 1 SF101, and that's going to go with the lining, and 1, we're going to use foam since I'm using foam for the purse, but I'm also going to add to this, I'm going to add a Peltex. What Peltex does, Peltex adds strength to the bottom of the bag. So we're not going to put the Peltex in until after the bag is basically constructed, which we'll go over that in class. But we're going to cut the Peltex in this video. And then we have the interior pocket. We're going to cut 3 on the fold, which is going to be 2 lining and 1 fusible woven interfacing. So we have 2 lining and then 1 SF101. That's what they call for. I know in this pattern, because I've done the bag before, that we're going to fold this, which is why we only need 1 piece of SF101. But usually, if it calls for 2 pockets, A lot of bag makers will tell you that you don't have to interface the pockets. I interface every piece of a bag, inside and out, with either SF101 or some sort of Pellin, mid-weight or soft weight interfacing. All right, so our regular tote pattern pieces are done. So we're going to put those to the side. Then we're going to go over, and I'm going to go ahead and do the overnight, which is what I'm making. So we're going to start with the G piece, or actually the J piece. We're going to put the J's together. And remember, this is the overnight, and it will say on the pattern piece whether it's the regular size tote or the overnight size tote. The overnight size tote is rather large. Okay, so our J's are put together. So now we're going to find our F piece. I'm going a little bit out of order, but it's okay. So we're going to find our F. And we're going to tape that together. Excuse me. And then our G and H. Those are going to get taped together. I've got a little bit of room here. It's okay. I just kind of squeeze it in there and try to just get it as close as possible. Okay, so there is that piece. Then we're going to move on to your L, which is the interior pocket. We're going to tape those together. All right, that is done. And we're going to take our K piece, which is the front exterior pocket for the overnight tote, and we're going to tape that together. And the only piece that you should have left over is the reinforced base, which we're going to stick to the bottom of that and then move to the other side. There's copy 2 of the pattern pieces. And just do it the same way as the first one. Okay, so, and again, if you are making the overnight, which I've decided not to, because this bag is huge. I've never made the overnight before, so I've only made the regular tote. Go through and highlight everything. Sorry, the dog is barking. I gotta let the dog in real quick. Sorry. So go ahead and tell, give yourself some notes. You're gonna do the 2 main, which I'm only gonna do this first panel this way. 2 lining, 2 SF101 for the lining, and 2 foams. And then you can do that to each of these pieces, okay? And then the only things that you should have left over are the strap holder, which we are not using webbing in the class, and the zipper end tabs. So all of that is one big old pattern, which I'm going to set aside because we're not using that. I'm not using that one anymore. So what I am going to do is, now we're going to have the strap holder and the zipper end tab for the regular size. We will have webbing inside the straps. That is not in the pattern. I will show you how to do that in class, but we're going to cut it in this video.
Sweetie, are you recutting and retaping for the smaller bag?
No.
Then how are you going to cut for people if you don't have the template?
I do. It's right here.
Oh, okay.
The regular. I'm not making the overnight. I didn't realize it was that big.
That's fine. And just then, when you come back, point out that this is, I've come back to the original size.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we've come back to the original size. So what we should have are the zipper end tab, which we're going to cut one exterior fabric. You can do any color that you want to on that. I'm probably going to match that to my strap color. So I'm going to call that my contrast strap. And then your strap holder, I apologize. This is the zipper end tab. The zipper end tab, I'm going to make the same color as the exterior. So that's going to be main. Sorry. The strap holder, which goes on the sides of the bags, to hold the crossbody strap. That is what I'm going to make out of the same color as the strap. So that's going to be contrast strap. All right, so we have the zipper end tab, which we're going to cut one on the exterior. We have the strap holder. We're going to cut 4, 2 exterior fabric and 2 fusible woven interfacing only to the dotted line, which we'll go over that. Okay. And we've got our interior pocket. We've got our reinforced base, which we've marked on. We have our exterior, front exterior pocket, which is the pocket on the very front of the bag. And then we have the main panel. Okay, so let's get cutting. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to cut our fabric out. You can press your fabric before, or you can press it after. I press it after. I cut it before I iron it. So we're going to start in order of the pieces. Move everything aside. So you're going to spread your fabric out. I cut my selvage off before I start anything because it just makes it so much easier for me. So let's cut the selvage off real quick. Okay. And then we literally just put our first pattern down. I put it on the very bottom. See if y'all can see what we're doing here, which you can. Make sure it's flat. I give myself a little bit of extra room on the bottom just to make sure that I am getting it all in there. And then I start cutting around it. All right, so that first piece is done. Inside the pattern, there were some little tabs that you could have printed and cut out. I do mark everything So I'm going to mark this as well, if I can find it. Oh, that's because that's the overnight. So we're just going to write it. All right, so I know that's my main. I'll just remember that for right now. I'm going to set that one aside. And then I'm going to move my fabric down. And do the same thing over again. If you cut it a little wide, don't worry about it. It's okay. I never get it 100% accurate, just as long as you're not overdoing it. All right, so our two main panels are cut. I usually leave the pattern piece with it and move it to the side. Grab some clips. All right, so the main panel's done. Get to use this for something else. All right, so we are going to move on to the exterior pocket. I've decided to change my mind on the colors that I wanted to do. So, of course, it's going to have shiny inside. Where's my cutter? I always lose my cutter. Joshua's over there eating popcorn. Again, cut the selvage off. You'll see that on the pattern pieces it says mark centers. Don't do that yet until we actually get everything interfaced, and then I'll show you how to mark the centers on everything. So notice we only needed one of these. And that is done. For our main piece, set it aside. Excuse me. I've decided to do my straps the same color as my lining. So with whatever you're wanting to do your straps out of, cut it first. And let me explain why, because the strap is going to be rather long. So I'm going to show you inside your pattern. This is the addition that I'm making that we're going to do in class because we're not using webbing. We're actually going to make our own strap. The webbing is going to be inside of it to provide structure, but we're not going to use the webbing on the outside of the bag. I don't necessarily like webbing. So in our pattern, we're going to add an additional cut from the contrasting fabric. You can do it any color you want. You can pick another color or do what I'm doing and make it the same color as your lining. So, but we're going to need 2 cuts of 39 inches long by 4 inches wide. So I'm going to cut those first because that's going to take up the most fabric, and then we're going to cut our lining after that. This is the fairy frost, which we are getting the other half next week, or half of the half next week, which I'm excited. Okay, so remember, we're going to be cutting this 39 inches long. I have a huge ruler and a big table. So if you don't have a big table, then just fold your fabric in half and cut it, you know, 20 inches long. And then whenever you unfold it, you'll have a piece that's at least, you know, that's 40. And then we can cut it down from there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the 39 inches by 4 inches wide, which are the front and back straps. I'm not making the crossbody strap, but the crossbody strap is going to be made the same way. If you do want to make the crossbody strap, you'll need to get 1.5 inch webbing, which I do have, and you're going to need to cut one of a strip of fabric 56 inches long by 4 inches wide. But it's going to be made the exact same way as the straps for the bag body. But again, I don't necessarily like crossbody bags, so we're not going to be making the crossbody strap. All right, so there's one. And there's two. Now we can cut our lining, which is going to be the lining side, front and back, and then the bottom. I usually start with the longest of the pieces, that way I'm not wasting fabric. And the longest of the pieces is going to be the very bottom. So, y'all can see that now. So now we're going to cut, we only need one. So one of those is cut. You can check along, which is normally what I do in the pattern. That way we can keep up with what we're doing. All right, so the bottom is cut. And then we're going to need two of the main panel, which I messed up. I should have cut the main panel first instead of the bottom. But it'll be all right. Make sure your fabric's stretched out. It's the only bad thing about not pressing it before you cut is you'll get a fold there, and maybe sometimes it can be a little too big or too small. All right, there's one piece of lining. Here's our second piece. So we've got our 2 main panel linings on the fold done. So now we need the lining for the interior pocket. I'm going to cut this piece off. Don't throw it away because we can use it for our strap ends or zipper tabs. All right, so now we're going to need our front exterior pocket. We just need 1 piece of lining. And that's done. And we're going to grab our interior pocket. I'm really glad I didn't do the tote version because or the overnight version. That overnight is huge. Like I said, you don't have to use the pattern piece on this particular piece because it's just a square or a rectangle piece. Once you've been making bags for a while, then it's easier just to not do it. But it's good practice to go ahead and use the pattern piece whenever possible. That way you know you're at least close on the measurements. Plus it's easy just to trace around it with your cutter. All right, so those are done. I forgot to tab my straps. Okay, so the only thing I have left to do is to cut my vinyl for my reinforced base. I'm going to use black because the bag is black. You don't have to. You can use fabric, which is fine. I just prefer vinyl on the bottom of my bags. Is really just preference. The foam you can use for structure with the fabric, and the bags that I have on the floor at the store, they also have the fabric. I apologize about the dog. Blue. Dogs. Y'all hush. All right, so we're going to cut the base. And that just happens to fit. I'm also going to put mine on foam because I like the way foam looks when it's quilted. And that's done. All right, so let's check our pattern, make sure we're not missing anything. Oh, we are. We're missing the zipper end tabs. So, with that piece of scrap that I cut a while ago, the strap holder is going to go on the side of the bags. So I want mine to match my strap. So I'm going to cut 2 from that.
Watch where you are on the board. And take a pause after that.
All right, so our strap holders are cut.
Checking the power. We're good.
Okay, and for the zipper end tab, my zipper is the black and white striped. I'm actually going to use a zipper stop is what I'm going to use, which I'll bring some to class. But I am going to go ahead and cut the zipper end tab. I just don't like the way zipper end tabs look on the bag. But I'm going to go ahead and cut it for purposes of the video. And I'm just going to cut it out of the same Fairy Frost. All right, so all of the main fabric is cut, but we're going to go over our list just to make sure. So our additional cut of the 239 by 4 for the bag body straps, that's cut. The 2 main panels for the exterior fabric cut. The 1 zipper end tab we just cut. The strap holder, which is optional, but I do like, even though we're not doing the crossbody strap, I do like the way it looks on the bag itself, on the sides of the bag with the hardware. So we check that. From the accent fabric, the exterior pocket, we cut that. The reinforced base, we cut that. That's my vinyl. And from the lining, we cut the 2 main. That's checked. 2 interior pocket, check. Front exterior pocket, check. And then the reinforced base, check. So now we just have to cut the interfacing and the foam. And the heavyweight interfacing, which is the Peltex. All right. So you should have your SF101. Your SF101, we're going to cut it for the lining. You don't need the 101 on the outside of the bag because we're going to use foam on the outside of the bag. If you were using fleece, then I would still, depending on the color of the fabric, use SF101. It provides a little bit more structure because the fleece is going to make your bag a little floppy. So, so we're going to start cutting this for the lining. I brought back all the pattern pieces. We're going to start with the largest piece, which is the main panel. You can do it sideways Even if you don't, even if it doesn't cover the entire area, it's fine. As long as you get most of it covered on the back, then your bag will be good. There's one. There's two. SF101 is wasted a lot. So I have a scrap bucket underneath my table of SF101 by itself. It's amazing how much SF101 is just literally wasted. All right, so there's the lining, SF101. The next biggest piece is the base. And this is where I do a little bit of mapping to try to keep from all the waste on SF101. So this piece up here is obviously going to get wasted. So we're not going to cut all the way to it. And that's going to be the same for the Megan bag. If you don't have to cut all the way up on SF101 or on interfacing in general, don't cut all the way up. Try to leave as much of it as a strip as you can, because we can possibly use that big strip for our straps. So there's our base lining. Next biggest is the interior pocket, which we can go up 2 on that. So we're going to cut it sideways. There's one. There's 2. So that little piece right here goes in my scrap bucket. The lining is SF101 is done. So now we just need the SF101 for the front pocket. I'm sorry, I was just reading the pattern because the front main pocket doesn't call for foam. So I was trying to see how I can give it a little bit more structure than it just sitting there. Which I think I'm going to go ahead and put it on foam just so it matches the rest of the bag. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. All right, so we just need one for the lining. And this is the front pocket lining. All right, that's done. And even though the pattern doesn't call for it, I am going to put SF101 on my straps because it does provide for a crisper, more crisp strap. All right, so I knew that my straps were about 40 inches long, 4 inches wide. SF101 is about 19 inches wide. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut 2 going up, 4 inches wide. Which means we're gonna waste a little bit, but put it in your SF101 scrap bucket. Because you can always piece SF101 together, which is what I do a lot. All right, so I've got 2 straps. They're about 40 inches long each. So I'm going to cut 4 pieces of the SF101 to put inside. You don't have to do this. This is my preference because my straps, I like them to be, like I said, crisp. And they just seem to be easier to work with, especially whenever you're ironing them or folding them, which is what we're going to have to do is fold it. With the webbing on the inside. All right, so those are for the straps. We'll have to cut it down a little bit after we get it interfaced on the straps, on the fabric itself, but we can do that after we get it ironed on. Okay, and then we do need the interfacing for the strap holders. You just need it to the dotted line. So what I do is just cut it on top of the pattern to the dotted line, then take it off, then cut it. And then use that piece to measure out your other piece of SF101. And the zipper end tab does not need it. Okay, so we're going to move on to the foam. The SF101 is done. Okay, if you are quilting your bag, I probably should have said this in the beginning, but quilting does shrink it a little bit. So I always cut my foam a little bigger than what I need. Not a lot bigger, not much, maybe a ½ inch on each side. And I usually do the fabric as well. But I'm using a different foam than what I've given most of y'all because I forgot to bring it home. So this is a different foam. This is not my preferred. This is thicker. So that's why I'm going to cut mine significantly bigger. So the only 3 pieces that we're going to need to cut, and really 2. It's preference on what you want. The reason why I'm cutting 3 is because I want my main pocket up front, the pocket in front of the bag between the straps. I want that to be poofy as well as the rest of the bag. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out of foam. You don't have to, you can cut it out of fleece. You don't have to cut it, you don't have to, you can just use SF101 on it. It's just gonna be really thin and it's not gonna match the rest of the bag, I don't think. But that's my preference. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. I'm not gonna cut it any bigger. I decided against it. I'm gonna keep it the same size, and if it shrinks, it just shrinks. But just letting y'all know that it will shrink a little bit. You will have to go back and cut it again. And it may not be the exact size of the panel, of the pattern piece panel. So there's one. And there's the second panel. So there's my main fabric. So I'm going to put my main fabric with that. My main fabric is black. So I am not necessarily concerned about putting SF101 on the back of it. If you had white fabric, or a really light colored fabric, then I would put SF101 on the back of it before I actually adhered it to the foam. The foam is not a white color, even though it looks it, but it doesn't, it shows through it's not very crisp, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. So, but that's also my preference. But since I'm using black, I'm not going to worry about it. All right, those pieces are done. And I am going to go look through my scrap real quick for my foam for the front pocket. Be right back. Found it. All right. It's out of the stuff that I prefer too, so it's not going to be as thick. Both of these are fusible. I prefer the one that I sell at the shop, which is the Bosal. It fuses beautifully. What I'm using today for the main part of the bag is Pellin, which I'm not too crazy about, but it'll work. And the rest of that will go back to scrap. Okay. So what we're going to do from here is, I'm not going to do it on video because most of you have taken the beginner bag class. But what we're going to do is we are going to fuse, we're going to fuse the foam. If you're using foam for your front pocket, we're going to fuse that to the front pocket here. Now this is fabric, so you can fuse it to, you can steam it from the front side. You don't have to turn it over. If it was vinyl, like the bottom of my bag, then you'd need to turn it over, turn the vinyl upside down and put the foam on top of it and steam it that way, because you don't want to put the iron directly on vinyl, it'll melt it. And then you'll need to put the SF-101, both of them are bumpy sides down. So anything fusible will have a bumpy side and a soft side. So the SF-101, you're going to want to do the same thing. Side down on top of it. I prefer not to iron it from this side. Whenever I SF-101, I prefer to iron it upside down. I just get less wrinkles that way. But again, that's preference. So you're going to want to do that to all of your pieces. I do press my pieces before. I don't starch them. I don't use anything else on them, but I do steam them just to get the wrinkles out. But go ahead and do that, and we'll see you in a minute. Hey everybody, we're back. I'm back. Jesus. Sorry, Josh was doing this whole 3, 2, 1 thing. Okay, so everything is interfaced. I had a little bit of trouble with the vinyl on the base, so I had to use some 505. We do sell that at the store. Sometimes it's necessary, depending on how thick the vinyl is. This is some pretty thick vinyl. So, and some pretty thick SF10, or not SF101, some pretty thick foam. So what you should have, this is before everything is quilted, you should have your strap holder, which is, has the SF101 just in the middle there. You can see that. Also label everything with a fabric pen, or you can do a pencil on the back. So both of those are strap holders. Then you have your zipper end tab. It is not interfaced. And then you have your front panel or your back panel. Again, I labeled it. Always mark a arrow up as well. And you'd think that that was a given, but it's really not. But what I want to show you while we're here is I want you to go ahead and mark the centers of everything that we talked about earlier. So what we need to do is we need to fold the fabric in half, like so. Make sure you can see that. You can. And then take a little pair of scissors and just a little bit snip it. And what that's going to do is that's going to give you a perfectly centered line. A little arrow right there. You can do that for all the pieces. So there's the front main panel. Here's the back main panel. Then we have the lining for the outside pocket, the outside pocket. The interior pocket pieces, those are all fused and labeled. Interior pocket. Sorry, right there I'm having trouble. And then front and back lining. Again, that's labeled and interfaced. Again, fold it in half, find your centers, snip it right there just a little bit. And then our base, excuse the dog, the interior base, that's our bottom. Here's one of our strap pieces. It's really long. That's the either the front or the back strap. I don't write on those. It's obvious that it's a strap. And then the last piece that I have is the Peltex, which we will get you during the time of class, because it's one of the last things that goes in the bag after you get everything done. So all you have to do now is quilt it and bring it to class. I will see you soon. Bye bye.